All right. All right, everybody, let's kick it off. We're going to go live today. We were having a conversation this morning talking about a little riff between the MLBPA and MLB about the pitch clock. And gosh, if you pay attention to baseball at all over the last year, obviously this has been a big topic. From a fan perspective, I think the pitch clock has been kind of nice. Get through with the game in less than 3 hours. It's a lot of action. But from the player perspective, there's a strong belief that the pitch clock, which is actually, they're bringing it down even further. Where it started, they're actually reducing the time on the clock, is causing injuries. And obviously, we've got a team here who knows a lot about that. So I want to take the next 20, 30 minutes and let's talk about this concept of reducing the pitch clock, or having a pitch clock even at all, is the underlying risk behind injuries, specifically for pitchers in the MLB level. Ryan, would you like to start this conversation off?
Yeah. I mean, it's a sticky one, and I know we talk about the sticky stuff as well. These rule changes are put in place to improve the game. Okay, to improve the enjoyment of the game. What we're seeing is an association, but it's not truly causation. Those are two different things. When it comes to Tommy John, they've had some spikes that are, very similar in the past 20 years to what we're seeing now. The only difference is there was sort of a lull period, kind of previous to COVID, and then we had the sticky stuff rule that went up because it's a change for pitchers. And then that sort of stabilized. And then we had the pitch clock, then we had another spike. The thing is that this is a fatigue induced injury problem. And there are not enough people that are examining fatigue. And so pitch clock or not, a guy goes into a game and their throwing arm has not recovered, especially a reliever, potentially from the day before, or it's not strong, and guys are walking around all the time with imbalances. Their arm feels good, but they don't know that inside, neurologically, it is not good. Doesn't matter about the pitching clock or the sticky stuff. If you're going into a game with any of these weaknesses, imbalances, or fatigue, okay, or it hasn't recovered, you got no shot anyway. So, the key is, I think, all around this is bringing to light, hey, we're pointing to biomechanics. That hasn't done anything, right? Biomechanics has been around for a while, and the technology is so incredible right now. Nobody has an answer there. The pitch counts, and I've been on 2 research studies that show they don't do anything, okay? And the guys aren't throwing as much now. They're not throwing as many fastballs now. The pitchers today are throwing less fastballs than any point in time in history. So I'm not convinced it's the velo piece. So the only place to look, which is so intuitive, is if you want to know arm fatigue, measure it. And we have that tool. I can't say that enough, is stop guessing and assessing. Stop picking all these different associations and actually look at the throwing arm. That's my piece.
Jordan, what's your thought?
I mean, it's hard to disagree with anything Ryan just said, even if somebody wanted to. And if they do, it's almost like they're just going back to those regurgitated points that everyone says, well, if you monitor pitch counts, you'll be fine. Obviously doesn't work. And pitch counts are important, but they need to be individualized. And I keep going back to even within the same athlete, and it's an athlete that, Ryan, you actually know. I won't use their names, but their first year as a freshman, they were at a school in Pennsylvania, and they were kind of testing for a little while. But their first outing, they had a sim game, and it was a 20-pitch outing and a 5-pitch break, and then a 5-minute break, and then a 20-pitch out, two sim innings of 40 pitches. Roughly lost 7% strength. Their coach repeated that same exact thing 7 days later. The athlete was recovered, but that given day on that 40 pitches with the same sim game, he lost 27% strength. These athletes respond differently internally. Same pitch count, same volume, same build, everything, same human being, but every day was different. So one of those was a very, very dangerous outing. One of them was not. And that's why you need to be able to adjust based on how that athlete's responding to that workload. And I'll use another example. I have 2 freshmen, and now we're just going to look at body type. I have one freshman who is 145 pounds. I have one freshman who is 210 pounds. He's not a fat freshman by any means. He's just a big human being when it comes down to it. The 210-pound guy is 6'2". The 145-pound guy is 5'9", 5'10". So tall, skinny. They both threw a 2-inning for me, 20 pitch, and then the other guy threw 20 pitches, and then they threw 15 pitches, and then the other guy threw 15 pitches. So 35 pitches, 2-inning sim game. My tiny guy, number one, he has a higher arm score, higher SVR. He has a stronger arm. On that outing, 2 innings, 35 pitches, he lost 2% strength. My big guy with a low arm score, lower SVR, relative to him, lost 15% strength. But they threw the same. So both those guys, by my athletic association, says they can pitch tomorrow. One of them's at a risk of injury. One of them is not. Same age, same pitch volume, similar velocities as well, within 2 miles an hour of each other. But we need to understand how that body responds in the individual and within the group. Because if we're just going off of, hey, he threw X amount of pitches, so he should be good, you're going to get hurt. And then I was actually on the phone with Ryan yesterday coming back from the field. I had a kid who pitched on Friday, 40 pitches on Friday. I'm working with him on a Sunday. We do his fresh exam. Everything looks good, but his internal rotators are flagged as a warning. Nothing hurts, nothing's wrong. But now I know we're not doing any mound work with this kid. And he was supposed to pitch on Monday. So we talked to the parents. He's at least pushed till Wednesday. But just because you've thrown to a certain amount of pitch counts, you need to understand how the body's recovering. If you don't know how the body's recovering, you may as well just set yourself up for failure right now and go play scratch tickets, because you have just as good of a shot as winning on scratch tickets as you do by not individualizing your pitch counts, because that's pretty much what's going on. Sorry for anybody who does scratch tickets. Ryan, don't take offense. I know your retirement's put into scratch tickets.
All right, but hold on, Ryan. When we started this, let's go back to the injury issue. You said that there is a rise in injuries related to when they implemented the pitch clock. So let's just focus on that right there. With that correlation, would you say adding the pitch clock increased the injuries in baseball?
I see, the addition of the pitch clock, it's challenging rest, right? Now, if it was a horrible idea, every pitcher would be hurt. Okay? So there's some that sustain it because they probably have, the right recovery habits, the strengths there. It's possible that they don't throw as hard. There's a lot of mix, involved. I still think, the root of the problem is understanding fatigue. Not every pitcher, especially the ones who've been trained for this, they might be a little bit more aerobically inclined, that they can sustain this. But I will tell you this, and this is something that I've seen in my athletes. The stronger arms are harder to kill. The athletes that I have with high maximum strength, when they come out of games or come out of like games and bullpens, all the things that we assess, it doesn't take as much strength out of them, and I think before we even think about the pitch clock, the biggest issue too is the training. It is not unusual for a pitcher to do arm care every day. Okay. And not only that, it doesn't build max strength. It's based on volume. Some of them have 10 exercises of 2 sets with 10 reps. Think about how many repetitions they would be doing, on top of any kind of shortened rest in the games. The problem is like, that's why I say it's an association. It's not a causation, and of course there are elements that are really, important to diagnose as far as, arm strength issues, the tempo of play. One side, we've improved the game's kind of fanfare. It's getting more people interested. On the other side, there is this health worry. What is interesting in all this is there's not a lot of players coming forward on the pitch clock to say, I don't like this. Personally, players, they love Major League Baseball. They love playing the game, but they don't want to be there that long. Think about it. If you get paid more and less time, they're probably pretty positive about getting home to their families and, actually having a life after games. So the thing is that I don't know if the rule change is going to go back to old days. I don't think so. The issue is that we need to adapt. We're constantly adapting. People don't know this, but in 1968, they raised the mound. The mound was high. They lowered it. They did something. They're changing the environment a lot, and players adapt. And the way that this is going to work is that if we have our athletes improve their strength, they're going to be requiring less out of their arm, okay, each pitch. So, the thing is that the MLBPA, they're not wrong, okay? They want more studies, and I get that. The MLB has done a lot of piloting, right? It's very hard to do research at the major league level in a major league season, testing, big league players who are contributing to wins and finances. So even the conditions that they can test are slightly challenged, okay, and not representative, unfortunately, of the environment. However, MLB is focused on this. I know because I've had personal conversations with people there. It's not like, hey, we don't care about the players. They do. They 100% do. And the thing is that when we make rule changes, right, we have to come up with a strong monitoring process. This is the only way. You think about, and I know I'm kind of digressing here on, is this the pitch clock? But it's everything. You got, 25 players, let's just say on the minor league level, you got one trainer. It's not sustainable for clinical evaluations, treatment, all these things, monitoring, throwing, or arm care programs. I watched how these things were done in the minor leagues, and people think it's a pitch clock, and they're talking about previous injury, and I agree. Previous injury, MLB cited this. Coming up now in injuries, that's true. But you go to a minor league field, and the people who are working in baseball, the trainer can't leave the field to look at, the arm care. It might be not done by players, right? The trainers have to be there. The big league level, it's a little bit bigger, but there's the observation of that, the individualization of that goes into it. So, it's on both sides of what we're reading. They're not wrong, but there's just so much more to the story, and then the thing is, we can't say association equals causation. I'm giving you a lot of different scenarios, and people are listening, of why this is happening, out around the pitch clock. And it's been happening for a while. The thing that we're seeing is this rash of Tommy John surgeries. I mean, it's been going up for a while. There's countless articles on the same thing. They're throwing too hard, or they throw too much. I mean, the pitch counts are the same limits for everybody. How ridiculous is that they're not individualized when you can look at the arm and evaluate it. You can individualize the training. So I think it can be made way safer and keep the fans engaged. Sorry to digress here, but the pitch counts are not, the cause. There are other causes that are making the pitch count look terrible. It's an association, but we can make it better.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting also. I mean, NCAA, I felt like, was pretty quick on implementing pitch clock as well before they, I would have thought maybe we felt it out a little bit more at the pro level, but I know this season there's a pitch clock in games. I mean, for younger players and maybe potentially more vulnerable players who aren't getting paid millions of dollars, do we need to look at this population differently? I mean, is this going to keep trickling down to high school and, even little league games? We got kids on a pitch clock.
Yeah, Matt, on that, I was telling you a little earlier today, is in our rules meeting, they were talking about possibly implementing a pitch clock at the high school level within the next 2 to 4 years. So finding a way to get that is going to trickle down. And I think it's a good rule change personally. I'm a big proponent of the pitch clock because, we don't need to see these, I'm all for a pre-pitch routine, but I'm not for a pre-pitch, dance and all these other, there's too much going on. I just want to see the game played when it comes down to it. And even from a coaching lens, I know you said you like it from a fan and a viewer lens. I like it from the coach lens as well, because now, number one, you're keeping everybody engaged a little bit better. And the big thing, Ryan, you've sat in those minor league dugouts, you've sat in the big league dugouts where there's this big lull because the pitcher's so slow or the hitter takes forever. And then next thing you know, your third starter on the list is like chasing butterflies in the dugout. And it's like, yeah, this happens at every level. And the more pace there is, the more everybody stays involved and the smoother that game is going to run. So there's a lot of benefits to it. It's not just for viewer experience. It's for keeping guys who are in the bullpen waiting to get ready engaged. It's keeping your shortstop more active between every play. So to me, it's a better change. And I don't think the pitch clock is, like Ryan said, the main reason for anything. Everything's going to contribute, but it's not the main reason.
I got a funny story on that. So, and I agree with Jordan 100%. I think the pitch clock is actually good for the game and increases fan engagement, but also from a teammate standpoint. So, little backstory. I played at Washington, and so we're in Seattle, and this is January, and we got a freshman. There's literally, because we had the old school AstroTurf, and there was like a layer of ice kind of building on this thing from like the lake or the wind. I mean, it just cut right through you. It was freezing out, and we're doing an inter squad, and we got this freshman on the bump. His name is Clay Johnson. He was a really good pitcher for us, but I remember he was a human rain delay. He would be up there, and I'm telling you, in between every pitch is behind the mound and just doing all his like little routine. And I'm telling you, the rest of his teammates are back there freezing their butts off. And I remember our second baseman, he was all conference. He went up to him when I'm playing first base, so I can kind of hear the conversation. But basically, he said, if you don't speed up when we get in the locker room, we're going to have some trouble. And I'm leaving some things out. But from there, he's basically going from the stretch and just pitching like every 10 seconds. So definitely appreciated by all the teammates out there. But yeah, I agree that the pitch clock's not going anywhere. Fan engagement's up. But I also think that, to Jordan's point, it helps speed up the game. The last thing you want to do is have that one guy just slowing everything down.
Mm-hmm. Ryan, we talked a lot about research this morning. What needs to be done on the research? And I know because that's the big thing right now. It's like we don't know. Where do we need to dig into this data and figure out what's going on behind this issue?
Yep. I mean, it's kind of a multifactorial approach. If you only set up one isolated study looking at throwing arm fatigue, you are not really going to identify best use cases. That's the key. You know, a lot of questions surround, and I know when I was with the Angels, we didn't want to test players' grip strength on game day. It was like, don't know. We don't want to do this. We don't want to test them before games. That was a big problem at the beginning because you had no idea. Jordan's laughing because we.
It's just like, I'm sorry. It's just like, you're gonna grab this thing. I need you to squeeze this for 5 seconds.
Yeah,
we don't want to fatigue them.
there was a lot.
Squeeze this thing for 5 seconds and tell me where you're at. 5 seconds is the difference maker. Then you're just not ready to pitch anyways. If that's
like
I don't know.
Yeah, and that was even we even potentiated these players gripping, doing RDLs and lots of things before games. So that was kind of a point of contention, is that there has to be best case practices. Testing before games would be something to look at. The timing windows of when to do the post exam.
I digress again, Ryan. But it's like I'm looking back and they're like, these guys need to be tougher. They have to be tougher. And then it's like, well, test them for 5 seconds. We don't know if they can handle that. And it's like, oh my gosh. Like,
well, and see that's Jordan makes a good point, is that we have to stop thinking about them like they're porcelain because they'll break. Because another study would be, using the device inter-inning. So being able to take this device, first start in a simulated situation where it's a bullpen, the adrenaline's not so high, to kind of see what does this look like and have a bunch of different parameters on how this is influenced. But The in-game assessment is really important. When we look at this pitch clock thing, we have to know inning to inning, how are they recovering? We got to improve our recovery strategies is a big deal. Using the tool, not only to train, but understanding how we can recover our players better is key. There has to be, a level that's high enough. I know independent league is one. There's some leagues that are really accepting. The problem that I see is that if you nibble at this, you don't get enough of a sample size. Something like this takes maybe 250 athletes, okay, that are relievers, different body sizes and types, to really understand how this is going to work on a larger scale. And people might not know this, but there's something called statistical power, and it's an analysis to make sure that you have enough people that their inherent variability is not going to cloud the data. You're going to see a more true effect. So, it's got to be multi-centered. Obviously one team isn't going to have that many, athletes unless a major league team came forward and said, hey, guinea pig us. You'll take all our players, top to bottom, all our pitchers, top to bottom, or two of them you probably need now, to do the study. So there's a combination of things, but the study is revolving around strength. It really is. What is the strength parameters that indicate athletes not fatiguing as much? Like, for example, in my study sample, I could probably save MLB, whoever's doing a study a lot of time, is that when athletes get over 100 on their arm score, the variation of change on the muscle strength is probably about 3%, okay, that I've seen, at least in relievers. It's a little more, maybe 5% in starters, of loss of strength in each muscle, okay? Our safety range that we have seen, pro ball and everything else, guys that had less treatment, less inflammation, okay, on pro players, is 10% for a starter. And even for a reliever, there's some, strength that's going to be taken out of your arm. So working towards programming to build max strength could also be another study. Instead of just being descriptive, another study should be interventional as well. Like, how can we set up a training program based on the app, based on the data, or utilize the app to boost strength and see what happens there. So the research piece, they need studies, not a study, in the long run. And then collecting all this and coming together and determining the best practices, to prevent arm injuries in Major League Baseball, and then any level, and Dugan, he's coaching, at the little league level. We have to establish the habits early. If they get, if these kids get signed and they've never done assessments of their throwing arm, they haven't trained individually, and then all of a sudden they get to the league and this shortened pitch clock comes up, it is going to be a problem because they haven't done the work.
Hey, Ryan, also on that too. And I tried to find the thing. I was trying to scroll through it. I saw a thing posted by, gosh, I don't remember who it was, but he put out a big thing and he's like, it's not is the pitch clock the issue? We need to go to a 6-man rotation, all these other things. And it's like, all this is good and grand to switch to a 6-man rotation to give someone a little more rest. They get an extra 24 hours in there, but it's not doable. And I think something that everyone overlooks that just popped into my head is they cut down the limit of the amount of players you can have in your organization at the major league level. You are capped. There used to be, like, for instance, the Yankees used to have, back when it was a Gulf Coast League, GCL1, GCL2. They had 2 short season teams before you even got to a full season. They had like 6 short season teams before you even got to a full season. So there was time to fix imbalances. There was time to do these things. And now I believe it's a 200-player cap in your minor league system. So you have to consider at least 9 of those on every single on every single affiliate are a position player. Mm-hmm. Plus, you're going to have 2 or 3 guys that are coming off the bench. An extra catcher, extra infielder, extra outfielder. Your utility guy who can do a little bit of everything. So you're at 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 guys that are just position players. And then that gives you your 25-man roster, which is 11 pitchers at every single level. Plus, you're going to have guys in rookie ball with a 35-man roster, but you're capped at 200. So that's great. We want to do a 6-man rotation. Where's that extra guy coming from? Where is this person? Is it already trying to just magically appear them anywhere? I personally think one of the worst things for injury at the pro level, as well as opportunity for a player to stay in professional baseball, was limiting the roster size. And everyone was panicking about pay and all these other things. But I'm going to use an example of a guy like Jeremy Beasley. That guy's a millionaire, and he wouldn't get drafted in today's rules. He wouldn't play. He would not get an opportunity. That man is a millionaire because someone took a flyer on him, paid him almost borderline nothing for a little bit. He's a millionaire. He won his team won the thing in Japan last year. Jose Rojas. That guy has, signed a good deal in Korea, played in the big leagues with a couple teams, and now he's with the Yankees in AAA. But that player would never have had an opportunity. So these are all guys that we know that I think the current rules and restrictions hurt players' opportunities, number one, to stay healthy because you're limiting roster sizes. And it actually hurts their long-term ability to make money because now there's less jobs available for somebody to take that gamble, bet, and win. And you get a Jeremy Beasley who plays in the big leagues, who makes a ton of money playing overseas and pitches pretty dang well. So to me, that's something everybody doesn't consider, because I'll use us as an example with the Angels. We were always under that 200-player cap. And I remember speaking with our farm director when they put that rule in. He's like, we don't even get impacted by that because we don't have 200 players. It's not a shock that we were always at the highest injury rate until we started really monitoring and sending people out to cover those innings when their arms were showing signs of overuse, signs of fatigue, signs of lack of recovery. And that's where you get into those organizations. Like, one thing it just clicked right now, like the Cardinals were always top in health when we were looking at their stuff and top in player development. They had I think at one point we were looking at, they had 215 or 225 pitchers in their organization. They could distribute the workload among everybody. Right. And then the guys that were ready, the Cardinals also had guys that threw the highest amount of innings totals. And at the time, the Cleveland Indians, now the Cleveland Guardians, they had the highest amount of pitchers in every organization too. They were the healthiest. They also had the highest pitch totals. So they had more pitchers who could handle those things. And the guys that were ready to be pushed, they pushed. So those are teams that, I don't know exactly. I know the Cardinals, for instance, they have used our dynamometer. I don't know if they still currently do. But they were monitoring these things in different ways. Whether they were doing it the way we recommend or not, I don't know. But they had enough players to spread the wealth, give guys opportunities, keep guys healthy, as well as push those innings totals in rookie ball. At every affiliate, their starters led in innings pitched on average per outing. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I think there's been a lot of things, not just the pitch clock. And number one is, if you have less bodies to cover innings, someone's going to have to wear it.
Yep. Well, I work for the Cardinals. That was the first team I worked for, and I don't know if they still use it. And you make a great point. Okay, going into this pitch clock thing, it's a workload sharing problem as well. The Cardinals started, when I started, they had something called a piggyback system. Okay. Now, and I've done research on it. Players in the piggyback system, they gain velocity over the season. And it's really good, in my opinion, for the guys who have been drafted, had a lot of work, but you get them pitching. You see, we tried the other thing, say complete shutdown. Remember, we had that onboarding group. No, they threw a lot of innings, get these great frontline starters, and they don't touch a ball the whole summer. And we train them. And guess what? A lot of them got hurt the next year. Okay. I don't know if there's a cumulative effect of taking players completely out of playing, where the Cardinals kept them throwing on a smaller scale, kept them competing, get the coaches and the coordinators to look at the kid and kind of understand, how do we develop them for the major league level? And then they started to, increase that workload at a lower level for them going forward. Restricting throwing is also a problem. And this is why they need the device. The workload sharing component is key. Let's say you have a player that's got a really bad injury history, right? You need him. I don't know, like a Noah Syndergaard, let's just say. Okay, he's had the lat tear and all sorts of stuff, but you paid $20 million for the player. You want to take care of him? Well, you need to test him on game day. You need to test him frequently and say, hey, man, we got to scale your bullpen down. Or we talk to our bullpen, say, these guys have, they're super strong today. Our mid reliever, We may need to bring, our pitch count down for Noah, and we're going to increase our reliever use to cover him, to get through the game. We need them to open for us, or they do something else, but they're able to manage the work, right, based on the strength level, or in some cases just absolutely punt him and say, you can't pitch until next week. We got to fix this stuff. He's worth $20 million. Who wants to lose that? And a really damn good pitcher when he's healthy. So, this is the key, and this is the key for baseball in general everywhere. You want to throw your stronger arms. You want to recover your weaker ones, in the sense of you want to give them opportunities to increase their training demands. So when they dial up in strength, then all of a sudden you improve your workload sharing model. The starters can go longer. The relievers don't have to throw as frequently and as much. You don't have as many guys that are trying to stretch out innings when they're not used to it. It all comes from the training, the assessment, and then scheduling players. Like, you have to actually be dynamic. You have to make adjustments. Coaches have to adjust to their players. We can't have the players adjust to us, say, hey man, I need you to go 2 innings a day. Of course a player's going to go, I want the ball. Even though it's like, my shoulder's kind of cranky, you're looking at some kind of treatment report, he's getting cupping every other day. It's like, come on.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've talked about 30 minutes on this topic. We've covered a lot of different ideas. Dugan, anything you want to say, or team, anything else to wrap it up?
I think that the last thing, just kind of bring it full circle, is maybe, Ryan, you can, for a lot of the users out there, we're measuring strength, right? So we have a dynamometer. You lie down and you press into a wall, or you grip, you do a pinch grip, and it gives you the muscular force, right? The max force output. Now, what's the correlation between that and fatigue? How does that specifically monitor fatigue?
Oh yeah. I mean, the thing is, think of Superman. I always say stronger arms are harder to kill. And it's true. It's just, you make a weight room analogy. If I squat, let's just say I'm competing in powerlifting, I only have to squat 1,000 pounds to win. Okay. And my max is only 1,000 pounds. Well, it's going to be a pretty damn hard struggle on my nervous system, but imagine my maximum squat is 1,500 pounds. So that percentage to win, okay, is much less. And it's the same thing when I'm throwing at high velocity. When your muscles are strong, the recruitment levels are less. Okay. You might not have to recruit as many fibers to throw hard. Okay. And you don't have to rely on so much stretching of all your tissues because you're strong. So those combinations, lead into what I think is critical and people aren't doing, because players want to just get out of the game and they don't want to take any extra time. But the post-exam, testing them after throwing, there's a lot of workload prediction models and technologies, but man, come on, let's get to the arm already. Let's see what happened to that arm after they throw.
Give you an example right there. As important to track.
No good. So the thing is like, we have the technology to say, hey, we're looking at how fatigable you are. That sets you up for understanding the workload demands for the week. There's some guy, there's a reliever, might have like what Jordan showed with all these alerts. He's fatigued after throwing 22 pitches. And then the next day, he's up again, right? We got to test him the next day. Has he recovered from that? Right? No wonder a reliever is going to get hurt if he's fatigued, because we test him after. It's like, man, his arm's shot. Okay. He lost more than 10%, and we've seen it. And then the next day, he also has alert because his arm didn't recover. And
we also don't count how many times you get that guy up in the bullpen.
Right. Or the next day, it's like, okay, we're not going to use him, but or he gets ready and they don't go in the game, and then because the situation changes, and then the next day he's pitching again. It's kind of the Wild West. It's like we're looking at all this stuff, like the pitch qualities and the release points. I get it. Those are associations. But when we're talking about the throwing arm, let's look at the throwing arm. Let's look at how the throwing arm goes into games. Let's look at how the throwing arm looks after games.
Mhm.
Let's look at how the throwing arm looks the next day. Okay. And let's do it more frequently. And let's do it more frequently with injured pitchers. Okay. So we don't have a revision. And let's make sure our pitchers don't say, oh, my arm feels good. Right? I don't need to test. Feel is not real. Okay. Feeling is not function. You don't feel your weakness for your throwing arm isn't the same as, you sprinting at high levels and everything's burning. Your nervous system can be fried without you even knowing. We got to do it. We got to test. We have to do this to change what's going on in the game, period.
It's good stuff. To wrap it up, I've been thinking through this whole thing, and I've got an analogy. I hope it holds up. So pitching, especially at MLB level, imagine you're driving a car 100 miles an hour down the highway. You're high risk, thin margin of error. We add a pitch count. It's like increasing that speed to 105 miles an hour. If you're in a sweet sports car with good tires and it's made to do that increase in 5 miles an hour is a marginal difference. We're not really increasing that much to go from 100 to 105 when we're driving down the highway. But when we're driving the junker with the wheels out of alignment and bald tires and the bumpers duct taped on, driving 100, 105, there's going to be major issues there regardless. So I'm saying our underlying point is, yeah, we might be increasing that risk in the margin of error by adding a pitch clock, but it's a marginal difference. And the main issue here is guys are walking out there on the mound with the junker with the hubcap duct taped on. We need to turn those arms into sports cars, prepared to sustain that demand, whether it's with or without a pitch clock. And it looks like the pitch clock is here to stay. We need to build stronger, more capable arms to handle those demands. So you guys all agree with the story I just laid out? All right. I've been thinking through that. How do we explain this? So yeah, there might be an increase in risk, but it's a marginal increase compared to the risk we're taking of rolling out a pitcher with a weak, unbalanced, under-fatigued arm or under-prepared arm. So anything else to say, guys? Want to wrap it up? I know Jordan wants to rant on the pickoff rules.
I hate the freaking pickoff rules. I think they're stupid.
Odd opinion on that.
I usually make fun of Honda Civics though, because I have one.
Okay. I didn't want.
That was the only thing, is I was gonna say, just because you throw the spoiler on the Honda Civic doesn't change it. It's still a Honda Civic.
I didn't want to throw anyone under the bus.
Ryan has the Accord, so the Accord can handle 105, but the Civic can't. So.
All right. All right, team. Well, until next time, thanks for joining us. Have a great day.